If you're married to an autistic partner, there's a good chance you've had this exact moment happen, okay? You bring up something painful, maybe it's emotional disconnection, maybe it's forgetting something important, maybe it's tone of voice, maybe it's intimacy, maybe it's yet another conversation that somehow turns sideways, and suddenly your ASD partner disappears. Not physically always, sometimes just emotionally. Maybe he goes silent, gets defensive, goes flat, he's irritated, dismissive, shuts down, or he starts explaining, correcting details, arguing semantics, or acting like you're attacking him. And in that moment, it can feel absolutely infuriating for the NT spouse. Because from your neurotypical side, it often looks like, well, he doesn't care, he's defiant, it's PDA, he refuses accountability, he always makes himself the victim, he shuts down whenever emotions come up. Okay, well, today, I want to take you underneath the behavior, because what if the shutdown is not primarily defiance? What if underneath that withdrawal is something much more primitive, much more physiological, and much more painful? What if what you're actually watching is a nervous system collapse driven by shame? Not ordinary shame, not just embarrassment, but deep-seated body-level inadequacy. The kind of shame that says, I'm fundamentally flawed. I'm defective at some level. I am definitely failing as a husband. I never get this right. No matter what I do, I disappoint my wife. I am defective in relationships. I'm too much or not enough, and I will never be safe emotionally. And when that shame gets activated inside an autistic nervous system, many people on the autism spectrum do not move towards connection. They move towards survival. That changes everything, because now we're no longer viewing shutdown as character failure. We're viewing it as nervous system protection. And that shift from blame to neurological empathy can completely transform the emotional climate of the neurodiverse marriage. I want to talk about the hidden engine under many conflicts. One of the biggest misunderstandings in neurodiverse relationships is this. The neurotypical partner often interprets autistic withdrawal as intentional emotional refusal. But many autistic partners are not consciously deciding, well, I don't care, or I want to hurt you, I refuse accountability. No, many are experiencing overwhelming internal collapse. And here's what often happens beneath the surface. An autistic individual receives emotional feedback from his neurotypical partner, but because many autistic nervous systems process social evaluation differently and often more intensely, that feedback does not merely register as my spouse is upset, it also registers as I'm failing, I'm unsafe right now, I'm under attack, I'm fundamentally inadequate. And once the nervous system enters shame activation, high-level relational functioning begins shutting offline. This is why conversations suddenly become extraordinarily unproductive. The autistic partner may become hyper-literal, argue details, go emotionally blank, avoid eye contact, leave the room, become defensive, shut down verbally. Maybe your ASD spouse freezes cognitively or starts masking. He might become emotionally flooded. He could seem robotic or suddenly just appear cold. But underneath those reactions is often not indifference, it's collapse. That distinction matters enormously, because if you misinterpret collapse as cruelty, the cycle will escalate. The neurotypical spouse pushes harder for accountability. The autistic nervous system experiences more threat. More shame enters the system. More withdrawal occurs, which creates more abandonment pain for the neurotypical spouse. And now both people feel profoundly alone. And this is why so many neurodiverse couples end up trapped inside recurring cycles where neither person feels understood. One partner feels emotionally abandoned, the other feels chronically inadequate. Now, let's talk about why shame hits so hard in many autistic adults. Most people on the autism spectrum carry decades of accumulated relational injury. And this part is critically important. A lot of people on the spectrum grew up receiving repeated messages that they were too sensitive or too intense or too awkward. Maybe they were too blunt or emotional or unemotional, or they were too rigid or strange, difficult, disconnected, socially wrong, and so on. Even when nobody explicitly said those words, the ASD nervous system absorbed them. Over time, many autistic children become chronic monitors of failure. They learn, I missed something again. I misunderstood again. I upset someone again. I got rejected again. I disappointed people again. That creates what psychologists sometimes call a shame-based identity structure. Instead of thinking, well, I made a mistake that needs correction, the ASD nervous system learns, I am the mistake. And then adulthood relationships become emotionally dangerous territory because Intimate relationships activate the deepest attachment vulnerabilities. The closer the relationship becomes, the more exposed inadequacy feels. So when an NT spouse says, well, I feel disconnected from you, the autistic nervous system hears, you are fundamentally failing as a human being again. Now, that's not manipulation. That's translation through a shame-conditioned nervous system. And once shame floods the body, many autistic adults experience actual physiological dysregulation, increased heart rate, cognitive shutdown, emotional flooding, freeze responses, executive dysfunction collapse, dissociation, loss of verbal access, panic, emotional numbness. In other words, their body is no longer operating in relational mode. It has shifted into survival mode. Now, let's talk about why try harder often makes it worse. This is where many couples accidentally intensify the spiral. The neurotypical spouse understandably wants emotional engagement. They want responsiveness. They want empathy. They want repair, ownership, and presence. That's fine. But if the autistic partner is already drowning in shame physiology, increased pressure can push the nervous system even deeper into collapse. This is why phrases like, why are you shutting down? Or just talk to me. Or you always do this. Or you never take accountability. Or you're acting like a child. Or you don't care how this affects me. Phrases like that, even when emotionally understandable, can unintentionally reinforce the autistic partner's deepest fear, which is, I am unsafe in emotional connection with my neurotypical spouse. And once safety disappears, authentic connection becomes neurologically impossible. Not because your ASD spouse lacks love, but because his nervous system is overwhelmed, and this is one of the most painful realities in neurodiverse marriage. The autistic partner often desperately wants connection while simultaneously experiencing connection as dangerous. And this creates enormous internal conflict. Now, let's talk about the difference between excuse-making and neurological empathy. And I want to say something important here. Understanding shame physiology does not mean eliminating accountability. This is not, he's autistic, so harmful behavior doesn't matter. No, pain still matters. Impact still matters. Repair still matters. But accountability delivered without nervous system safety will fail. Why? Because shame blocks learning. When human beings feel deeply defective, they stop integrating information effectively. They become defensive, protective, avoidant, or they just collapse. This is why neurological empathy matters. Neurological empathy says, I want to understand what your nervous system experiences during conflict. That's very different from, you get a free pass because you're autistic. In healthy neurodiverse healing, both realities matter. The neurotypical spouse deserves emotional safety, and the autistic spouse also needs emotional safety. Not identical safety, but mutual safety. And many couples have never been taught how to create that. So now let's talk about going from defensiveness to safety. Let's look at what actually helps. First, couples must learn to identify shame activation early. This means recognizing signals like sudden flat affect, verbal shutdown, detail fixation, emotional disappearance, irritation spikes, over-explaining, rigid thinking, withdrawal, the I can't do anything right statements, and cognitive confusion. Those are indicators that the ASD nervous system is moving out of relational capacity. Second, couples must slow conflict down. Fast emotional escalation overwhelms many autistic nervous systems quickly. Slowing down is not avoidance, it's regulation. Third, language matters enormously. Compare these two approaches. Here's approach number one. You never listen to me, you always shut down. Versus, you know what, I think your nervous system may be overwhelmed right now, but I still need us to stay emotionally connected. One triggers shame identity, the other preserves dignity while maintaining accountability. That difference is massive. Fourth, autistic partners themselves must begin learning shame awareness. Now this is huge because many autistic adults don't realize how profoundly shame drives their reactions. They may think, I'm just logical, or I'm just defending the facts, or I'm just explaining. Well, underneath that explanation might be terror. Terror of inadequacy, terror of rejection, and terror of relational failure. Now, healing begins when the autistic partner can gently recognize, you know what, my nervous system is collapsing into shame right now. I see it coming. That awareness changes everything because once shame becomes conscious, it becomes workable. Now, let's talk about the fact that the real goal isn't perfect communication. A lot of couples think the goal is, well, never fight, or always communicate perfectly, or never trigger each other. Well, that's unrealistic. The real goal is building repair capacity. Can two nervous systems return to safety after rupture? Can shame stop becoming the hidden third person in the marriage? Can emotional withdrawal stop being interpreted solely as malicious intent? And can both partners begin seeing the humanity underneath the reactions? That's the deeper work. Because underneath many autistic shutdowns is not lack of love. It's a fear. Fear of failing, hurting the person they love, being exposed as inadequate. Fear that no matter how hard they try, they will never fully succeed relationally. And many neurotypical spouses are carrying their own deep wounds too. Abandonment, loneliness, emotional deprivation, confusion, chronic invisibility. So both people are often hurting at the same time, just in completely different ways. Now, if this video resonated with you, I want you to remember something incredibly important. A nervous system in shame can't heal through humiliation. It heals through safety, not permissiveness, not avoidance, not pretending harmful behavior is okay. Safety, because safety allows the brain to stay online long enough for growth, empathy, accountability, and repair to occur. And when couples begin reframing shutdown not merely as defiance, but as a physiological collapse tied to deep inadequacy wounds, the emotional atmosphere of the relationship can begin to change dramatically. Blame softens, curiosity increases, compassion expands, and both people become less alone. That doesn't instantly fix everything, but it creates something many neurodiverse couples have never experienced before, a relationship where both nervous systems matter. And for many couples, that becomes the beginning of genuine healing. And wouldn't that be nice? Now, if this topic connected with you, let me know in the comments what stood out more strongly for you. And if you're trying to heal a neurodiverse relationship dynamic, make sure to subscribe, because this channel is dedicated to helping couples move from chronic misunderstanding toward emotional safety, regulation, connection, and repair. I'll see you in the next video. Would you like to schedule a paid private coaching session? This will be in the form of a face-to-face Zoom call. Underneath any of my videos, you'll see this Calendly link. If you click on that link, it'll open up my calendar. You can pick the available days and times that works for your schedule. You'll get a follow-up email immediately after purchasing a session that will have the Zoom link that coincides with the day and time that you picked. I will get an email too that you scheduled a session, and I will be available on that exact day and time, and we will talk. I look forward to working with you.